Hello, everybody. Rick DiClemente here. Welcome to Astrology Unplugged. This week, thoughts came to me about uh, thinking of personalities, and I chose 30 strong personalities that we all know. And this really helps you because we're only going to go into each chart for about a minute and show you what that poignant part is. For instance, when you see Neil Young, you'll be looking for something Plutonian, and you'll find it. And when you see Woody Allen, you're looking for something that's a little, and we're going to find that too. Janis Joplin, where's the intensity come from, etc., etc. So I think this is a very good learning tool to go through these charts fast, quickly, and we will learn. Okay? So we'll get started with opening the chart for Woody Allen. Now, it's interesting. I'm going to go quickly. Of course, he's a Sagittarian with Sun next to Jupiter, but you've always got this perverse thing chasing him. The T-square to Neptune, almost always, people with a strong Neptune are addicted to filmmaking, photography. They just love that image of making an image. It's not real, but it's real. That's where the Neptune comes in this chart. Also, being Virgo rising, I don't think that hurts. It's interesting tonight, all these people have birth time, so that's a dream for astrologers. But I was looking, and the Pluto-Mars, it can be a very, very heavy sex drive. Doesn't always, depends, it's 1 degree away. And a T-square is up to Uranus. Okay, so this is one of the few cases tonight. The Saturn doesn't help him any, and neither does the moon in Aquarius, or the Jupiter, Mercury for that fact. But this is one of the cases where I went to the harmonics and watch what I found. It was very intriguing. And it is eighth harmonic. The eighth harmonic is the sexual harmonic, or his use of power. Look at this. Moon in Gemini opposite Neptune and Uranus. And I'm just going to say this clearly. Gemini is, and it can be, a very perverse sign. Well, certainly not always, and many Geminis are fine, but without a doubt, it's the most perverse of the 12 signs. And when you've got several planets in Gemini, you've got to keep an eye out for it in the chart, unless the chart has other factors in it to calm it down. And the reason it's Gemini is because Gemini's theory is anything goes. Let's try that. Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be interesting? And when you think about Trump, my cat found his new toy, he's going crazy. When you think about Trump and him being a Gemini, one of the amazing things about the Gemini sign is they take things seriously that are lighthearted. They take things the reverse. And one of the main things about Gemini is essentially they do not equate this different than this. Hey, I just saw a building burning down. Hey, I noticed there was a footprint on the sidewalk. They're equal value. You see this with Trump. All the time, he doesn't have a sense of what's more valuable than what the other thing. And that's the basic nature of the mind being discovered in the sign of Gemini. Because the mind is, ooh, look at that, ooh, look at that, ooh, look at that. It hasn't gotten to the part where it weighs it back and forth like you see so much in the sign of Libra. So Gemini is not always perverse, but you have to watch out for it. And it doesn't take many planets in Gemini to cause it. But certainly Woody Allen's got his history. Okay, now we go to next on the list, Lauren Bacall. And I was thinking, I saw her act in London one fine year. The thing about her, she's got that sleepy, kind of subtle power. She is very beautiful. But she had that power, that seductive film noir type of seductivity. And she's surprisingly a Virgo. But what's interesting is the Saturn in Scorpio squares out ascendant by 2 degrees just about. This is where that Scorpio trait's coming from. And what we're talking about seductivity is seductiveness is scorpionic. That Saturn feeds right into that moon. The moon is very strong. And the moon gives forth Cancerian energy, and Cancerian energy is what gives us voluptuousness. Okay, it's a very sexy kind of energy. So we're seeing the Scorpio here, and we're seeing the 3 Leo planets, or the 2 Leo planets, that are able to help override the Virgo being too uptight and too they had a good time, and too provincial, puritanical. Okay, looking at David Bowie, that was really intriguing. And when you think of Bowie, you think of the glam rock, and you think of him being so creative. You really don't think of him being a Capricorn. But these 3 very powerful Leo planets, right there in the 7th house, we see a T-square with, unknown at the time, Eris opposite Neptune with the T-square over to Mercury and Capricorn. Now, the Venus is critical, and I cannot overemphasize planets on an angle. They're a big, 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 big deal. So you draw that Venus like this. That Venus is huge. And Venus in Sag is all about, let's try this, it'll be fun, let's try this. But where does all the melodrama come in? Ziggy Stardust. It comes with the Leo planets. It comes with the Leo planets. This is why he goes on stage. And he was not only proud, but he drew a whole age group with him. He opened up the stage for glam rock. Very powerful. And you would see something like this also in Warhol's chart. And Warhol was a Leo. Brando. What do you sense with Brando? Maybe it's better to do it this way. What do you sense with Brando? Brando's got this command. He's an Aries. Got this secret, powerful sense of centered self. It's not just Aries. Aries isn't strong enough to do this. So there's got to be something Plutonian. You know, almost like he could hypnotize you without hypnotizing you. So powerful. It's powerful sense of self. That's what you're going to look for. Okay. And we see with Brando a double Aries, Jupiter's rising. Here again, we see the Saturn in Scorpio, very strong in the first 2 degrees. First 2 degrees of Scorpio feeding right to his Mercury. Look at this. Again, we're seeing Pluto opposite Mars. It's wide, it's 7 degrees, with the T-square, 17 and 10, the T-square right to the sun and moon. Okay, when you got a T-square to the sun and moon, you have a very strong sense of self. It's not debatable. You just got it. You see people's sun square moon or sun moon that aren't affecting each other. They don't have that kind of sense. And I saw him once on an old Carlson show, and he was showing Carlson how disappointment looked. And he was showing how depression looked. And he was showing how sadness looked. And he was just showing Carlson how just the subtlest thing that an actor can tweak inside them. And you could see it coming out of him just by the way he was thinking. And it was just a marvelous thing to watch. Such a subtle shift. But you see, he's got command, okay, of that sun and moon. And certainly he was the childish side of Aries too, we have seen. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, what are you going to see in James Brown's chart? James Brown, you're going to see outrageousness. I mean, just bold, powerful, stubborn, sexy, strong, overwhelming, outrageous music. And he was known to be very cheap, and he wasn't paying his help and all that kind of stuff. Look at James Brown. Okay, the moon in Leo is rising. The sun is right at the top of the chart. You know? I saw his first concert I ever saw, 1965. I was 13. I went to see him. I couldn't figure out why the women were passing out and falling down the steps. Why are they doing this? I thought the usher better get over there and help them. I don't know what's wrong with them. They were just overwhelmed, and we were in the grips of Uranus Pluto from 1965, the same year. And things were getting outrageous. But you see with him, the sun is extremely powerful. And the artist with the sun 3 degrees from Venus, the Saturn is just, it's a bucket pattern almost. The Saturn is unyielding. You know, his presence, the Taurus sense of being anchored to what he was doing, and the dance steps that he did were outrageous and way ahead of their times. And you have to think, with somebody like that, he's got to be very Uranian, which is not a Taurus quality. He's got to be somewhat Aquarian or Uranian to be so far ahead of his time, with his band being so sharp. And there's Uranus right by his Mercury in Aries. So he's not going to just play with it. He's going to let it out. He's proud, powerful. Very intriguing to go through all these different cats. Okay, what do you think you're going to see with George Carlin? You're going to see a master of language. He's kind of crude. He is a Taurus. And Taurus can be kind of crude. Very witty, very political. Very political. In his latter years, he spent a lot of time in the sense deprivation tank, in deep, deep meditation. People don't know that about him. He was a clown on stage. He was farthest thing from a clown. He's a very serious soul. So when we look at him, okay, what do we see? Uranus near the midheaven. Very powerful. Off the wall. So he'll say anything to anybody. That's also his brilliance. And the Uranus is 4 degrees from squaring the ascendant. So he has a very Uranian, Aquarian impact on people. And I think if you look deep inside him, you sense that idealism of Aquarius. You sense him trying to show America what we're doing wrong, what we're doing is sick. But he was very, very insightful and quite probably the greatest comedian ever. Quite possibly. We see a strong Neptune sitting by itself. We see a Jupiter, Pluto, which is all about being tempted to abuse his power. And T-square up to Venus in Aries. So that's why he was at 13 years old. He was making his teachers upset. He was just a class clown. Okay, what I got to say about Tucker Carlson? What I got to say about him? He's already doing a number on himself. There's a very negative side to Taurus. There's a very good, positive side too. But we see with Tucker Carlson, we see the sun and moon together in Taurus. Okay, when you have a male with the sun and moon in Taurus, you're not going to convince him of anything. Nothing. You're wrong. It's only a matter of how wrong you are. Okay? Now, where does he get this bewildered look? This look of incredulity, where everything he's looking at is like, I'm not sure where that comes from. We see Eris is right on the midheaven, and we see Chiron is there, and that's probably why a very down-to-earth private Taurus has come out and is, in his mind, serving mankind in a very public way because of the power behind Eris and Chiron, both in Aries. They're both very much headstrong energies. We see Uranus, Jupiter, Pluto in his mind house, the mental house. the Saturn in Taurus. What this guy did not need was to take all this and put Saturn in Taurus also. This is why he's so unbelievably conservative. Nothing new is any good. It's got to go back to the old times. Only the old times were any good. Okay? And you got to be pretty ballsy to take his seat. That's a really big position. And he's also responsible for an awful lot of people staying stuck in old types of thinking. Look at all this sun moon opposite Neptune. A deluded personality. A sun moon opposite Neptune, you would have to work exceedingly hard. That's probably where that's a incredulity look that he has. That's probably where that comes from. That look like he's overwhelmed by stuff. And when you're looking at Neptune, I can guarantee you he has absolutely no idea who he is because of the Neptune opposite the sun and moon. He doesn't have any idea what he is, but he thinks he's XYZ. His ego thinks he's XYZ, and there's no touching it. But there's absolutely no flexibility in the chart whatsoever. He's a dangerous man. Who else has planets like this is McConnell. Even though McConnell is a Pisces, he's got tons of Taurus in him, which are similar energies. And those are the kind of energies that you need to have to withstand the kind of abuse and all the salvos set at you when you're political and conservative. Now, talk about changing the subject. What are we going to see with Jim Carrey? He's a Capricorn. You're going to see something that's funny and outrageous, all right? And he's actually very spiritual, and he's very caring, etc. But something Uranian, because when you look at Williams, and you look at this chart, you're going to see off-the-wall type stuff. Well, where do you get it? You got to go looking for Uranus. Boom! Right on the midheaven in Leo. Right? Uranus in Leo right on the midheaven. Within 2.5 degrees. Very strong, opposite Chiron. And we all have that, by the way. Everybody born between 1930, 37 years. Everybody that was born between 1952 and 1989 have Uranus opposite Chiron. Some of them have it in different signs, but that's because Uranus was on an 84-year orbit and Chiron was on a really weird elliptical part of its 51-year orbit, and they just stayed opposite themselves for 37 years. And when they got discovered, when Chiron was discovered in 77, what does Uranus mean opposite Chiron? It means let's get introduced to alternative types of medicine. Alternative ways of, looking ahead, being ahead of ourselves, alternative ways of healing. And 77 is when all this started. All these people started with all kinds of Reiki and all kinds of different things manifested at that time. So the Uranus in Leo makes him outrageous. I was thinking of Robin Williams, who has Uranus in Leo. When you're really, really quick-witted, like Jonathan Winters, these guys, it's always Uranian. Jerry Lewis, when you're just quick, it's got to be Uranian. No other planet can do it. It comes from Uranus. Look, he's got Neptune rising. Okay, so that's why he's malleable. He stretches his face in so many shapes. And he does have kind of a bucket pattern to the moon. And I think this is probably good because you don't want a moon in Gemini in most cases. In this case, the moon in Gemini can help him get out of all this too much Capricorn here and too much Aquarius, too much Saturn here. So the moon in Gemini can help him. That's where he gets his sudden shifts and goofiness. But also, when the moon is exaggerated like this, it's not just the moon in Gemini, the moon gets exaggerated. And this is where he gets his warm side from. He has a warm side, warmth. That comes from Neptune having feelings for everybody, mankind, and from the moon being exaggerated. But where you really learn about these characters is go back and see when planets hit there, when planets crossed here, when planets cross here. You see what we're doing? We're doing stuff most Americans don't, most humans don't even know exist. Don't even know exist. I do at least 4 to 10 charts a day, times 40 years. I at least look it up. Where's that coming from? Where's it coming from? We're all seeing it coming from human traits, which they are. I see them coming through planetary archetypes, which is the same thing. So it's just fabulous, and that's what tonight's about. Think about the person, think about which is the energy that hits us, and let's go find it in the chart. You give me, you give me? Okay, good. All right, next on the list, Kurt Cobain. All right, Kurt Cobain, I believe he was Aquarian, ahead of his time. He's got to be Plutonian. Just kind of dismal, ends up killing himself, but heavy duty and singing about the pains of a generation and able to pull it off. He's got his head down, his hair hanging in his eyes. What do you see here? Look at that. The Pluto-Uranus generation. Everybody had this from 1960 to 71. He's got it enveloping his ascendant. You don't need to look at anything else. You don't need to look at anything else. The poor guy had moon in Cancer. But when Pluto-Uranus is right on your ascendant, one is rising, one's about to rise, you are so purpose-driven, obsessed. The collective grabbed him and told him what he's going to do. He didn't have a choice. And I'm sure heavy drug use came about it, but there's where the powerful Pluto is. And remember, a whole generation of 11 years was born with Pluto-Uranus counted together. And it peaked in 65. Very rebellious energy. Just fascinating. Okay. Onward and upward. What do you think you're going to see with Katharine Hepburn? Strong, visualize her way before her Parkinson's. Strong, tremendous actress, maybe our greatest. Powerful. Okay, she's a Taurus. Rooted. Oh, there she is. There's the tremendous, this is very fascinating. Jupiter Neptune is that energy where you love God, you're really attracted to God, you're holy, you're pulled towards God. And I was looking at why the Democratic Party so screwed up. The Democrats have Jupiter Neptune opposite Saturn. They believe it, they don't believe it. They believe it, they don't believe it. They believe it, they don't believe it. They believe it, they don't do anything about it. She's got the Jupiter Neptune, which gives her the vision and the love of the divine, but they're opposite Mars Uranus, which means, hell yeah, do it. So she's this very grounded double Taurus, another double Taurus, with a very powerful Mercury, which I think really helped her. But this key here is this Uranus, this Jupiter-Neptune spiritual combination opposite these two wild, let's do it, energies. This is what came out later in her life while she was shaking. It wasn't the disease, it was the energy from Mars Uranus ended up being called Parkinson's. It's just too much chaotic, crazy energy coursing through her veins all her life. And the T-square goes to Venus and Aries. What do you think you got with somebody with a really powerful Venus and Aries? You don't F with them. You know, they're powerful. They got a powerful presence. Who's her big-time boyfriend all her life? Spencer Tracy, the Aries. Okay, so she had a very Aryan type of chart, very powerful, very spiritual, very Aquarian. But what did she love to do? What did she love to do? Play in her garden. That's what Tauruses love to do. They love to play, get their hands in the garden, and that calms them down and gets them recentered. How am I doing? I'm about halfway in time, and okay. Let me hold on for a moment. Okay, let's see here. We got a 3, 4, 4, 3. All right. Let's go back to it. All right. Billie Holiday. Well, by God, all these years I thought she was a Scorpio. I found out she's an Aries. But she's so sexy, slinky. Listen to these Billie Holiday songs. I found out the other day, God Bless the Child by Blood, Sweat, and Tears was written by her. She wrote one of the most powerful songs in American history called, I forget the name, but it was about a man being lynched. About what black people went through being lynched. I forget the name of it, but one of the most powerful songs ever written. And Aries, so what she's screaming at Pluto, right? She's screaming Pluto. Strange Fruit. Thank you very much. If you've never listened to Strange Fruit, go listen to Strange Fruit and look at the lyrics, because she just lets you have it like a good Aries. What's that strange fruit dangling from that tree? It's intense. Okay, here's Billie Holiday. Here's the Pluto Saturn, which we're all coming into again now. Saturn and Pluto are coming together now in the next 2 years. Look at the Neptune, how powerful, right opposite the moon. So this is the most powerful part of the chart. The moon opposite Neptune, right across the ascendant. This is somebody who's emotionally lost all the time. And I guarantee you she had problems with alcoholism when you got moon Neptune. But it gives her a ghostly quality, a quality of being everywhere at the same time. Just like the smoke on a stage when the stage manager is using that machine and putting smoke across the stage. That's moon Neptune. Pisces, 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 Pisces. Forget the fact that she's an Aries. The woman's a Pisces. She's got 7 planets there. And the moon opposite Neptune. But boy, when the Pluto spoke, why was it so loud? Zoom in. The Pluto's at 0 Cancer. You got to zoom in. 0 Cancer is square to what? 3 degrees from square to Aries, which you didn't even know existed back then. The Pluto aspects the ascendant. But what a case of somebody who's so Piscean. That's why sun signs are just about worthless. What a tremendous chart. You give you the heebie-jeebies listening to that song. Have you ever heard Strange Fruit? I'm going to unmute you two. There's just the two of you. So you're unmuted. It's like a hypnotic song. It's so sad. Okay, moving along. What are you going to find with Whitney Houston? Power. She's a Leo. My God, she knocked you down with her power. That comes from the sun. But the sun, the inner planets are worthless without the outer planets. The inner planets don't have any punch behind them. It's got to come with aspects to the outer planets. Where you've all heard her voice. Powerful. We're going to get to Janis Joplin later. Here's Whitney Houston. Here's the sun and Venus, the love of music, love of singing, opposite Saturn. And believe me, oppositions and squares to Saturn are very powerful, and they're not what the book is. They really give you power and the ability to shape it. The T squared to Neptune, coming out in the 8th house. Now, look at this power, just from having 2 planets right on the angle. Just right there, Pluto, Mercury in Virgo. So she's very scorpionic. And here's the Uranus-Pluto conjunction again, this time with her Mercury right between it. She had a very powerful mind, and this is probably what led her to suicide. Tremendous struggles within the self. The T squared to Neptune, the Chiron's rising in Pisces. This is a tough chart. Sun being opposite Saturn retrograde. When you see something like this, this is a bad father. Not always with Saturn, not always with Saturn retrograde, but when you got it in the 12th house, this is a father who was not available. Probably had a lot to do with it. Okay, my favorite of all time. Where do you think he got his energy? What kind of energy did Curly have? Curly Howard. You know it's got to be Sagittarian, and it's got to be Uranian. I wrote a whole newsletter about him one time. Just phenomenal abilities. He's so Uranian. Take a look. He was a Libra. His older brother was Shemp, Mo, and then Curly. Here's the sun high in the chart. Here's a grand cross. 18, 13, 20. 5 planets in a grand cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mars and Uranus in Sag. That's where you go beep, 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 and you dance backward. Okay? I found out he got that from Shemp. Shemp really created it. Mars Uranus is just this crazy man energy. It's so likable because it's Sag energy. And he's a Libra. He wanted to be loved, wanted to be liked. The moon in Scorpio, very passionate, very intense. The Mars Uranus goes over to Pluto. The Pluto squares what? Jupiter. So you got Mars, Uranus, Pluto, and Jupiter. You just got this crazy energy. And what did he die of age 42? As soon as Uranus got into Gemini, at age 42, as Uranus was around here, and when it went into Gemini, he started having a series of strokes. He kept working, they kept pushing him, pushed him too far, he had a fatal stroke. But that's what he died of. But you see that outrageous energy has to come from somewhere. Soupy sales. There's a guy that does all the exercise, the real highly spirited guy doing the exercises. What is it, Marcia?
Richard Simmons.
Yeah, Richard Simmons. You'll see Uranus in his chart too. Uranus in a fire sign. Yeah. And for him, it's nothing. I mean, we think it's crazy, but for him, it's just nothing. The guy that died in Australia, Steve Irwin, right? The crocodile hunter, crocodile wrestler, whatever. He had a really strong Uranus. You could see it when these people, they're coming out of themselves as they're talking. They're so excited. It's because of a strong Uranus. What do I have? Sun opposite Uranus. Right across my ascendant. Sun opposite Uranus. So that's why astrology just pours out incessantly. Michael Jackson. What do you think you're going to see? Well, he's a Virgo. He's very skilled. You're going to see Pluto. And you're going to see something else that's perverse in there. Where's the perversion coming from? It's got to be there. Michael Jackson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in the 6th house. He's already a Virgo. So that's why he's so... Do you notice his movements are very exacting? Cunning? Very Virgoan. Black and white, sharp, machine-like. Virgos are about being robotic. A lot of his movements are very robotic. The moon is rising in the chart. This is his downfall. Too much emotion. Too much. The world revolves around me, whether I want it to or not. And Virgos don't want the world to revolve around them. They want to be in the background, but not with 3 planets in Leo. They want to be in the foreground. I want to be in the background. I want to be in the foreground. I want to be in the background. You see the struggle? And then you got his idiot father that did what kind of numbers on him. Saturn in Sag at the top. Usually when a Saturn is that strongly pronounced, there's usually no rapport with the father. Okay, so we got problems with the father, and we got problems with the mother. This is not always the case with Saturn Moon. You can jump to that conclusion, but I've talked to too many people. The dad was fine, the mother was fine. But when they're both angular like this, and they're both square to each other, wonder why that, there's a square right there. Okay, you got the sun and moon opposite each other, the 2 main planets. You've got a bucket pattern to Mars. Okay, so you're going to get into the sexual proclivities by looking into his 8th harmonic, which I'm not going to do now. He's got the Jupiter Neptune, and that's why he had almost an idol worship of following. Fascinating. I don't know what it's like being the other 4 brothers, but I'm sure they learned to take a back seat real quickly. What, ready for this one? Janis Joplin. What are you going to find? Power, Capricorn. Power. She's knocked you over. Boom. All right, where's it coming? Sun is in the 12th. This is why she probably leaned towards alcohol. Chiron's right there in Leo with the North Node. Leo energies are what we're looking for. Uranus square the ascendant. Uranus, very powerful in Gemini, but this is Uranian. She's very Aquarian from this energy here. She was no little well-behaved Capricorn girl. She was outrageous. We got to see more than this. Where does this power come from? You've listened to her the other day on Woodstock. Ball and chain, my God, it's like she plugged into 14 power mills. She's unbelievable. Where's it coming? It's got to be generated somewhere. It's not just the sun. Well, the sun sends its energy to Neptune. It sends its energy to Saturn, Uranus. It sends it back to the sun. And this is just this phenomenally powerful fire circuit. Just this is the generator. And cardinal signs are the generators. Capricorn, Aries, Libra, Cancer. We're the cardinal signs. We generate activity, start activity. So I was looking at this, and not only is she so astounding, this is worth the trip here. Let's take a look at her 5th harmonic. Okay, the 5th, I don't usually do the odd numbered harmonics much, but the 5th harmonic is your talent, your ability to sing and express yourself and go on stage. So we take our chart and we put it through the harmonics and we pick out number 5. And what do we see? All right, look at this. Jupiter, Neptune. She's singing to God. I don't care what you call it. Come on, just break another little piece of my heart. She's screaming. She's pleading with the deities. Powerful. Moon, Venus in Leo. Opposite Uranus. There's your power. There's your power. But when you think about the greats of Hendrix and you think of Joplin, the people who transcended, you see it in Neil Young too. they're beyond normal life energies. They're plugged into the muse. If you ever listen to an interview by Neil Young, when the muse talks, he stops, whatever he's doing. Whatever he's doing, wherever he is. When it talks, he stops and he leaves. And he goes out and he writes it down. Because the muse is driving him. Okay. Let's take a look at Lennon and McCartney. What are you going to see with Lennon? You're going to see brilliance, really sensitive emotionally, very bruised emotionally, but brilliance. The idea leader, Libra, idea, air sign, leader, cardinal, John Lennon. Okay. Look at the moon all by itself. That's Yoko Ono, right there. When he started allowing Yoko into their performances, their practices, no one ever came in except George Martin. He started bringing her in because his Libra need for a partner. Well, the Beatles totally changed. He lost his mother. This is somebody who's very needy emotionally, right opposite Pluto. Less than 1 degree. You don't want your moon opposite Pluto by less than 1 degree. If you got it there, put it 4, 5, 6 degrees. But when it's that close, you're always searching for where's the mother? Where's the mother? And then spiritually, you're looking for where's the mother inside. And listen to the songs he wrote near his end, the beautiful songs he wrote about his wife and having their child and motherhood and woman, one of the greatest songs he ever wrote. Here's the 3 Taurus planets. Where's the genius come from? Well, it comes from the moon in Aquarius. It comes from the sun right near the ascendant. That's the ability to be very leonine, or to come out of this emotional suffering and to be very expressive. The Mars Neptune is very spiritually based, right opposite Eris. The chart is ruled by Mars. And the cleverness. I mean, he could take you apart verbally. He could take these press people apart just with a look or a statement. That's the Mercury in Scorpio. And that's why he was brilliant. And don't underestimate Saturn. Part of his brilliance was because his Mercury was always tied up with Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn got such a bad rap. Saturn is the planet that allows you to bring it together. And one reason it allows you is it frustrates you so much that you have to work hard at it. And it's one thing I've learned about the Beatles. They worked hard. They really worked hard to get good sound. So why they quit. They couldn't play over the screams. Rolling right along. Let's look at McCartney. Wow, what a chart this is. All right, let's see. Okay, the Neptune rising. They said he could sit down and write like six hits in one day. He's this machine like Dylan is. Another Gemini. The songs just kept pouring out of this guy, just pouring out. Well, the sun is right at the midheaven. Gemini, 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 Gemini. Give your heart to somebody soon, right away. All these little lighthearted songs that come out of him. And then Lennon came along and made them deeper and smarter and darker and more intriguing. And that's why when they were breaking up, Lennon wrote a song to McCartney saying, "Your music is like music to my ears." Your music is like music to my ears. Mars in Leo, Pluto in Leo, Chiron in Leo, Moon in Leo, all square to Venus. It just pours out of him. You don't have to have trines and sextile for stuff to pour out of you. That's why Arroyo's book is so important. The one he talks about, the handbook for planetary combinations, the handbook for planetary, because he shows how these planets combine. Yeah, the square is going to give you more trouble than the trine, but they're connected. They're flowing into one another. And that's why, if you probably sat in a room with McCartney, he'd probably drive you nuts. He'd be sitting on the couch and coming up with 14 different songs in 1 hour while you're talking to him. It just pours out of it. Where's the T-square? Neptune to Eris to the sun, Jupiter. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Just pouring out of it. So they're really intriguing to watch these guys, because you go back and see what happened when Saturn went over here. What happened when Uranus went over here? And you see these different moods that the Beatles went through. These different songs that came out of. It's always in the planets. Always. Or it can't happen. You just can't. They're one and the same. Okay, moving along. Marilyn Monroe. What are you going to see with her? Sexiness and childhood. Childlike, vulnerable, and sexy. Scorpionic, and something very childlike. Aries or Gemini. Right? Vulnerable. She's a Gemini. What, she lived to be 32? What was it? Wasn't long. Sun in Gemini, T-square to Saturn in Scorpio. Okay. There's the Neptune rising, the filmmaker, the film star. There's the Neptune opposite Jupiter this time. It's not as healthy as the Jupiter conjunction with Neptune. The opposition is much more problematic, and she's very prone to being waylaid and being taken advantage of. There's the innocence. There's the innocence. The moon is innocent. The Neptune rising is innocent. The two Gemini planets are innocent. The Venus in Aries is innocent, but not with a T-square to Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn squares the moon. Saturn squares Neptune. So when you would go back and see her death, her quote-unquote suicide, put the outer planets along the outside, and you see what's going on in the chart. But the main thing what we said before we got to her, innocence, power, sexiness. Mozart, childhood genius. It screams of Uranus. You have to have major Uranus to be writing symphonies when you're 4 years old. Uranus. He's an Aquarian. Boom. Look at Uranus. Right on the descendant. Right there. Powerful. The whole chart. A guy like him, you're going to look at every planet in the chart. Okay, you got the moon, Pluto, passion, which is similar to what Beethoven had. You see the sun next to Saturn. Again, don't fall for these crappy books that tell you, oh, he can't express himself. When I got my chart read in 1971 by the art teacher at the CAC, she saw my sun square Saturn, and she said, well, you're just not creative at all. And after 25 movies later, I said, I beg to differ. But that's what happens when you're reading books and you're not seeing what's really happening. Saturn is the most common planet in a successful chart. Because without it, you can't get it together. You can't get through the bumps and the grinds and have the stamina to keep working and give shape to. I bet you, we'll never know, but I'll bet you if we ever saw Jesus Christ chart, I bet you Saturn would be really powerfully strong. I got a good chart that somebody researched and they think it's this chart and it's marvelous, but nobody knows. Uranus, brilliance. Uranus hits Pluto what age? 4. 4 degrees difference? Solar arcs move that 4 degrees, 17, 17. Uranus and Pluto combined in his chart when he was 4. Now, this is the kind of guy you're going to go into his past life, and you're going to see he's been doing this for many lifetimes, etc. There's the passion. Not only is this Pluto-Moon conjunct, same degree, coming out of the 4th house of deep, deep emotion. Okay, and then this triad here, all opposite Neptune. This is the heavenly stuff, the magic flute. This is the heavenly stuff pouring right into his sun. Okay? Just fascinating. Keep on walking. What are you going to find with Jack Nicholson? Well, my cats are chasing the bug. Nicholson has always been curious to me because he's right on the cusp of Aries and Taurus. If you look at him, he's very Aryan. If you look at him, he's very Taurian. And he, in fact, with the birth time, he is a Taurus. And he's got that kind of ornery, that's a good word, just that orneriness. Where's that come from? Okay, here's the artist, 8 degrees away, Sun, Venus at the top. And not only that, this is 7 degrees away. So his sun is at the midpoint of Venus, Uranus. These are a big deal in astrology, midpoints. That's what this table is. When a planet sits at the midpoint, it shares the quality of the other two combining. So when you combine Venus and Uranus, you have unusual, quirky, off-the-wall, ahead of his time art, and his sun's right there in the middle. This is where he got his ability to, what are you doing, 5 easy pieces? Is that what the one? He told the lady to make him a sandwich. She just wanted the toast. So he ordered a BLT without the L on the T. She said, we don't make toast. So give me a BLT and leave the lettuce and tomato out. Okay. Jupiter Pluto means that he's had to struggle all of his life with challenges of using or abusing his power. And this 2626 is very powerful, and it T-squares 224 very nicely. So this is very, very troublesome because everything right now is at 23, 24, 25 of cardinals. So he's in a lot of danger now for somebody that's not young. He's 81, he's 82. He's coming into his Uranus return in 2 years. Uranus is going to return. 84 years later, Uranus is 7 now. So Uranus is almost hitting his Uranus at the same time that the Pluto, Saturn, and Eris is all joining up at these 3 different points. So he's in store for a real opportunity in the next 2 years to leave his life, to leave in a relaxed fashion, fulfilled. I've done what I've come here for. That's what the Uranus return does. Not all people are lucid when it happens. Not all people are real conscious, but with David Hawkins, we saw him leaving at 84. His work had been done. With John Paul II, he left right during his Uranus return. His work was complete. You could see it in John Paul's face. He didn't want the white robe anymore. He wanted to be done with it. He wanted to move on. The powerful Uranus return, which we're talking about more and more now for people who reach 84. Joe Pesci. What are you going to find with Joe Pesci? Pull a little tiny trigger finger, he's going to shoot you. Dangerous. He's got this subconscious thing he emits where he's dangerous. And it's not just in the movie where Goodfellas, where he shot the waiter because he pissed him off. He's got this energy. He's an Aquarian, but I guarantee you he's got a very dangerous Pluto. All right? Let's take a look. There's Joe Pesci. Here's 2 off-the-wall Gemini planets rising. Here's the Sun in Aquarius. Here's Pluto, opposite Mercury, up and down the midheaven. Okay. Mars opposite Jupiter. Here's a T-square to Mars. Where's his unpredictableness? Is it the Gemini coming at him? It's got to be Uranus, this Uranian thing, since he is an Aquarian, and it's Uranus rising. You see, there's another part of astrology called what the hell is it called? It's not the decadence, there's another word for it. If you take every sign of the zodiac and you break it into 2.5-degree chunks, the first 2.5 degrees of any sign is the strongest part of that sign. So you see his Uranus is sitting well within the first degree of Gemini. So this is a very powerful Uranus, and it's in a sign of Gemini, which means he'll shock you with what he says. It comes out of nowhere. So any planet sitting in the first 2.5 degrees of any sign at all time is a very powerfully placed planet. Okay, Elvis. What do you got? What Elvis? Well, you got the Capricorn in him, and you got the moroseness of the Capricorn with him, but you got Pluto-Mars sexiness, something. Driving generations crazy. They're just passing out of those concerts. There's your Capricorn, right opposite Pluto. Venus, Mercury, right opposite Pluto. Where does it go to? Not only that, it all T-squares right to Uranus. So way, way ahead of his time. So far, they could only film him from the waist up on Ed Sullivan, right? This is how you learn. Keep bringing chart after chart after chart, looking for these qualities. They got to be there. If they're not there, then you tell a person they got the wrong birth time. And they'll deny it. You keep waiting, you're usually right. How about Prince, a Gemini? Well, Prince obviously is very Plutonic, and he's quirky. It's not just Gemini quirky, it's Uranus quirky. No, it's not time yet. Stewart's here. Pluto right on the midheaven. Moon. This is so powerful. Pluto, Moon, you don't need to look at anything else. I mean, he just reeked of sexiness as a guitarist, singer. This is a Gemini playing. You have 2 planets there. You don't need to look at anything else. The Pluto Moon is so powerful. He knows it's time for meat. It's 9:02. He gets his meat at 9 o'clock. So you're doing good, Stuart. Your timing is perfect. Show him how beautiful you are. There you go. He knows 9 o'clock is when we get the canned food out. What do you think you're going to find with Frank Sinatra? And this really surprised me. I know he's Sagittarian. He's got that cool. Sinatra's so smooth. Smooth, effortless. Neptune. Neptune. Top of his chart. You're going to have to wait, buddy. I'm sorry. Got a little while, you got to wait. Saturn opposite Venus means that he did not always come across as the warmest person. Kind of standoffish a little bit with his emotions. But the Neptune is very powerful, and I'm sure the fifth harmonic would show us phenomenal singing ability. Here's a very interesting stellium of Chiron, Jupiter, and Eris. Okay, we don't have any T-squares here. But guys like this, you got to see stuff remarkable. Here's the sun trine to Mars. It's got to be remarkable Here's the moon at 5, trine to Pluto. Here's Chiron trine to Saturn. These are the kind of charts that really fool you. They don't look like much at first. You got to just keep studying. The chart is ruled by Venus, and the Venus is opposite Saturn. So, and it's opposite Saturn retrograde. So his singing is not just a joyous Neptune offering to the clouds. His singing, he's trying to get free of the hurt. Free of the hurt. This is what's wrong with Trump, with his Venus-Saturn conjunction. He's getting bombarded now, which is why he's falling to pieces. Springsteen, power, Libra, really shaking up society, shaking up the people. Novel type of New Jersey sound. Boom. The Libra, Uranus rising. Interesting. Moon, Mercury, Neptune, all within 9 degrees. This is a very intriguing combination that's very hard to translate. Here's the Sun in that first degree of Libra. Here's the Saturn in Virgo. That's where he gets that blue-collar working man's type of edge to him. Pluto, Mars. Here's your power. Pluto, Mars, and Leo. He's going to let you have it. Okay? He's going to let you have it. And all the Libra in him, this is why Libras are very socially conscious. They just are. They need to make their mark on society. Intriguing chart. T-square to Uranus. Roger Waters. We're getting near the end here. We'll just go overboard with time since we're down to the end. Roger Waters, you got to find that intensity and brilliance with Pink Floyd being the bass player. Here he has Eris all by itself. He's got the Mars Uranus being very ahead of his time, opposite the moon in Scorpio. If you ever looked at his face, then Roger Waters, Scorpio rising, very deep looking. Mercury, Neptune. There's the hypnotic, the wall, and the different beautiful songs that Roger Waters wrote, hypnotic songs, along with Gilmore with Pink Floyd. Now, this was really interesting, and we're almost done. We'll just do 2 more. The Brian Wilson. Why did he lose his mind? Besides the fact that his dad drove him nuts, why did he lose and have such a massive nervous breakdown? At the same time, so incredibly brilliant. Okay, Gemini, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4 planets in Gemini, all rising. So there's the great variety, and there is that high pitch. Gemini people, especially the men, they have a high pitch to their voice, almost always. Like you'll hear it with, oh God, what's his name? I can't remember too many names anymore. Childlike quality. Fox. The kid on the Family Ties, his name was Fox. What is it?
Michael
Fox. Okay, that Gemini, it gives them a childlike look. They look and sound childlike because it's a third sign of the zodiac. And Uranus is rising. And this is where Brian Wilson was so far ahead of his time, just a genius. Look at, it took him like 80 days to record Good Vibrations. 80 days. He tweaked that. He just knocked the Beatles out of their shoes when he wrote such a song. Here you see the Pluto, Mars, Chiron, powerful in Leo, the Sun, Jupiter. But he's just way ahead of his time, and the T-square is coming down to the Sun, Jupiter. He had to express himself. And finally, we'll take a look at why Neil Young can strum one chord and the whole damn audience is just mesmerized. Who can do that? And he plays guitar like he's strangling a guitar neck. It's so intense. Scorpio. Boom. Pluto, moon, sun. Pluto, moon, sun. This is why Neil Young does it. This is where the pizzazz comes from. This is where I told you when the muse speaks, he stops and he runs and picks up his guitar. He's a very deep soul. Now, what's interesting is that particular age group, which also had Van Morrison, they all had in 1945, they all had this triplicate, this beautiful stellium of Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune. This is where Van Morrison got his abilities. This is where Neil gets them. And it's unfortunately where Trump has them, Trump uses them. This is absolute total charm and charisma. And you see Trump uses it, abuses it. You have the sun rising, and the main thing you see here is the Pluto is squaring the ascendant. The moon is squaring the ascendant. Pluto is opposite the moon by 2 degrees. The Pluto is stationary, just stopping, not moving in either direction. Pluto, moon, and the T-scores all go into that sun in Scorpio with Scorpio rising. This is where he gets his magnetic energies from. And we see that Mars rules the chart. Mars is up here very strong and grounded with Saturn. And he does have the Mercury opposite Uranus. And that's why a lot of his songs, they're very mysterious. You're trying to figure out what's he talking about. But with Neil, you don't need the words. You don't need to. He's telling you about a sound. He's telling you about the mood. But I don't know of anybody who can mesmerize a crowd with one note. Plus, in one of his early albums, he played the same note 19 times in a row and got away with it. Whether it's Down by the River or whatever it was, he's just hitting the same note, and he got away with it. It worked. Okay, anyhow, good times, good times. I did it. It took me an hour and 7 minutes, but 30 charts. So the idea here is, you know, when you hear people say, there's something about this guy, but I don't know what it is. Well, you do know what it is. Start to sense it. And it usually falls into 5 categories, 6 maybe. They're Plutonian, they're Neptunian, they're Uranian, they're Saturnian, they're Jovian, but it could be Martian. You could feel these energies. So that's why I think it's good to go through a bunch of people very quickly instead of belaboring just one or two. We got some good stuff coming up in the future. I just met with a lady today who will be on our show in the future, probably next month. Her name is Leanne Fortunato. She was on the first show, my first guest, the 3 women that talked about the retreat in Italy called Dominher. She is a marketer who's helping people market their companies quantumly. Fascinating. I talked to her, and she goes with the client to the quantum space of where they're just startup companies. She goes to the place where that company exists, and they sit down and they draw the logo, and that place tells them what to do because it already exists, because there is no time. And this is really heads up stuff. She's really far ahead of her time. She's going to be on in about a month, and really intriguing. Leanne Fortunato Heltzel. 2 names with a dash there. So you'll be hearing from her in a few weeks. And I paid my dues tonight, so I hope you picked up and learned from it. You can feel the energies. So when you're around people or you're wondering, write down their name, write the celebrity, write down and say they got to have this energy. And then there are all kinds. Just type their name into Google and say blah, blah natal chart, and that'll become their chart, and you'll see it. By the way, last thing I'll say, one of your really good sources when you're looking at people across the world is a place called AstroTheme. AstroTheme.com is a French site, and most famous people of all types are in there, and they have most of them with birth time, some without. Anyhow, it's been a good night. Hope you enjoyed it with Rick DiClemente and Star Self and Ray and everybody. Thanks for being with us tonight. Thank you, YouTubers. This will be up on YouTube sometime tonight or tomorrow. See you next week.